Ancient Sumerians believed that the Netherworld Ancient Sumerians believed that the Netherworld is located deep under the ground. Thus, according to Gilgamesh Enkidu and the Netherworld, Gilgamesh's bowl and mallet that he used to make furniture for the goddess Inanna ends up falling down through a crack in the ground into the Netherworld. In the lament for Damu, the Netherworld is described as a distant place. It is written, I am the lad to the distant, the Netherworld. However, this statement should not be understood directly. The word distant may serve as a metaphor. Thus, according to Dina Katz, it reflects the Damu's separation from his loved ones and the world of living. The fact that the Netherworld is described as a distant from the world may help explain why it is impossible to communicate with the dead directly and why the dead can't come back from the Netherworld. In the myth of Inanna's descent to the Netherworld, Enlil and Nanna refuse to help Inanna to come back. They ask, who, having gone to this place, could you expect to come back again? In the Sumerian literature, the Netherworld is commonly called the land of no return. This description reinforces the idea that the Netherworld is difficult to escape. However, at least several characters of ancient Sumerian literature escaped the Netherworld, but these cases were exceptional and required divine intervention. In ancient Sumerian literature, there are some metaphorical descriptions of the road to the Netherworld. In the myth, the death of Urnamo, the road to the Netherworld is described as desolate and twisted. According to the lament in the desert by the early grass, this road finishes off the one who walks it. This may symbolize the final moments before the death. However, some authors further interpret this journey as a form of rite of passage. In Inanna's descent to the Netherworld, the process of entering the Netherworld is described from a different angle. The goddess passes through 7 gates. At each gate, one of her regalia is removed until finally the pale dress is taken from her. As each item is removed, the chief doorman declares that the power of the underworld has been fulfilled. This procedure is commonly interpreted as the loss of Inanna's divine powers, the me. While this interpretation appears logical, the text itself does not explicitly state that she loses her divine powers. One possible interpretation is that Inanna's passage through the 7 gates reflects the fundamentally different order of the Netherworld. As she descends, she is stripped of the regalia that defined her power in the world above, since such attributes are no longer meaningful in the underworld. We can see that in general the journey to the Netherworld involves the abandonment of the attributes of the world. This interpretation appears logical, since the Netherworld operates according to its own order, which differs from that of the world above. Thus, the dead must untimely leave behind everything associated with the world before entering the Netherworld. When the journey to the Netherworld is complete, the dead are finally ready to exist within this new order. But what kind of governance sustains the Netherworld? Well, the goddess Ereshkigal was the queen of Sumerian Netherworld. Samuel Kramer describes her as the goddess of death and darkness. She was given the Netherworld as a gift, while gods are allotted every part of the universe and nothing is left ungoverned. This is important because it means that the Netherworld acts not like an opposition to the divine order, but acts as a part of this order. For example, when Inanna tried to seize the throne of Ereshkigal and usurp her power, the Anuna, the 7 judges, rendered their decision against her. Um, they looked at her, and it was the look of death. According to Dina Katz, the Inanna's attempt to usurp Ereshkigal's throne is not merely an offense against Ereshkigal, but also a violation of the world order, and therefore an offense against the great gods who determine the world order. Moreover, Inanna is escorted out of the Netherworld by the Gala, a demon-like creatures. The Gala are commonly interpreted as the police of the Netherworld, and unlike later or more familiar concepts of demons, they function in accordance with the divine order, which in some sense may reflect the structure of the state governance. Here we can see a significant difference between later concepts of hell and Sumerian, the land of no return. There is no opposition between the world and the Netherworld. In fact, the Netherworld is the continuation of the world in the afterlife. We have established that the Sumerian Netherworld was part of the divine order. So what were the conditions within it, and what factors shaped them? Well, when Gilgamesh asks his servant Enkidu about the fates of different people in the Netherworld, Enkidu explains the conditions of the dead there. He says, a man with 2 sons sits on bricks eating bread, a man with 3 sons drinks water from a water skin, and so forth. The more sons a man had, the better his conditions were in the Netherworld. A man with 6 sons is cheerful. A man with 7 sons is as a companion of the gods. He sits on a throne and listens to judgments. Why may the conditions vary depending on the number of sons? In the first elegy of the Pushkin Museum, a son expresses wishes that the gods of the Netherworld would look after his dead father. He is saying, "May you be adopted by the lady of the court. May she have compassion for you." This may explain why fathers with many sons have better conditions in the Netherworld. However, there could be a more precise explanation. The idea that the number of sons improves the conditions of the father in the Netherworld may be an allusion to the fact that larger families were associated with greater wealth and status. It was not only the number of sons that defined the conditions of the dead in the Netherworld. A man eaten by the lion continues to suffer. A leprous man twitches like an ox as the worms eat at him. A man who died in fire can't get to the Netherworld. Enkidu says, "I did not see him. His spirit is not in the Netherworld." This demonstrates that in some cases the dead can't get to the Netherworld, but it looks more like an exception rather than a common rule. Thus, the specifics of mortal life may affect the dwelling in the Netherworld, but not in a way described in later concepts. We can find another nuance of the afterlife in Ninisida's journey to the Netherworld. In particular, there are lines describing the Netherworld as devoid of everything necessary for basic needs, such as clothing, food, and water. According to Dina Katz, this may reflect the harsh nature of the Netherworld in contrast to the civilized world. It suggests that, unlike some other concepts of the afterlife, the Sumerian afterlife was more like a shadow of life rather than an improved or desirable state of existence. So we have made a journey to the Sumerian Netherworld. What can we now understand about it, and how does it differ from the later concepts of hell? Well, the overall image of the land of no return appears to reflect structures familiar to the living. Death and transition into the afterlife have always been sources of anxiety, and people have long sought ways to understand what awaits them beyond life. In this context, the Netherworld, as a dark and harsh reflection of the known world, may have provided a coherent framework for expectation. The use of familiar structures and roles could serve to reduce the uncertainty with death and the afterlife. It is important to underline that the Sumerian concept of the Netherworld does not involve moral judgment. As a consequence, it is not depicted as a place of moral punishment. The conditions of its inhabitants may vary, but they do not depend on a person's moral conduct during the lifetime. Well, thank you for watching and see you in the next video.